Station 51, engine 27, engine 32, truck 105.
You're listening to The Fire Break with Steve Wolf.
Welcome back to The Fire Break. I'm Steve Wolf. As you know, The Fire Break is sponsored by Team Wildfire, developing innovative technologies for wildfire suppression, containment, and management. Boy, that's a challenge, but you know, it's not an area where there's a tremendous amount of innovation. So a little bit of innovation goes a long way in this field. And who knows more about this than Steve Hawks from the IBHS, which I thought was the hyperactive version of IBS, but apparently it's not. It's the insurance business home safety folks. Steve, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well, and Steve, thanks for having me here today.
Tell me a little bit about what you do at IBHS and what IBHS is.
Okay, yeah, I'm a Senior Director for Wildfire at the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS. And IBHS is a nonprofit organization that's funded to do research on how different perils, severe weather, and wildfire impact homes and businesses, and what are the vulnerabilities to those structures. And in the wildfire peril, how can we significantly narrow the path for a wildfire entering into a community and then becoming that conflagration where we have mass structure loss? And so we focus really on how do we significantly narrow that path.
So you were talking about fire entering a community, and I guess all fire management is about fire being stopped from entering something, entering the home, entering the community, entering the boundaries. So what's promising? What are you seeing that looks like it might?
Yeah, so really we have a significant body of research in how to protect homes from even the most severe wildfires like the Eaton and Palisades fires that were most recently in January in Southern California. And these actions that homeowners can take are based in research and then field validated during the nation's most destructive wildfires. And so we know that these actions, when implemented as a system of actions, not just an individual action or two, but a system of actions, meaningfully reduce the risk, and it significantly increases the chance of a home surviving, like I mentioned, even these most intense wildfires.
So what specifically do you recommend, and are people discouraged from doing anything because it won't work in every circumstance? Like, are people willing to do incremental?
Yeah, I think people are willing to do incremental, and that's what it takes. So you have to start somewhere, and you may have a number of actions that you need to do around your house and on the house, but you have to start somewhere. So start, and then just keep on going through that list of actions until you complete all of them. I think there is a perception that under these high intensity fires that there's really nothing that we can do to prepare for them. And in fact, that is not true. There are things that we can absolutely do. As I mentioned, there's a great body of research around how homes are vulnerable to a wildfire and the right mitigation actions that are based in science that homeowners can take to meaningfully reduce their risk. But again, it's that systems-based approach. Under these really intense wildfires, you can't just do one or two things and expect that you've significantly reduced the risk. You have to do the whole set of actions that your particular situation needs, and each individual property is different in the era that the home was built in, the materials that was built out of, and the surrounding area, and the influence of fire. So we need to look at each individual home and then determine its vulnerabilities, and then develop a list of actions that homeowners can implement from there.
And what type of things would we see on these lists?
So it's really two things. It's looking at the home itself, the roof, and the other components of the home, like gutters and vents and eaves and siding and windows and so forth, and making what might be a vulnerable area of the home or a vulnerable component because it maybe has a highly combustible material, like siding, for example. Maybe you have combustible siding material. How do we make that siding more resilient to withstand the wildfire that has entered in the community and can burn right up to the edge of the house or close by the house and create a lot of heat? So how do we make the home more resilient to the effects of that fire? And then while we're looking at the home, we also look at the area that surrounds the house and the combustible objects that are there. And those could be other sheds or outbuildings, fences, firewood, ornamental vegetation, anything that's combustible in an urban environment.
Neighbors,
trash cans in neighbors' homes, yes, can ignite and lead to the spread of the fire between homes and within the community. So how do we make the area that surrounds the house reduce the exposure and by removing objects? Can we remove them from the property? Can we move them farther away so that if they ignite, they're not right next to the house and then lead to the ignition of the house? Or can we make them more resilient themselves? An example would be a wood fence. In the last stretch, say 5 feet of the wood fence that leads up to the side of the house, make that a non-combustible version of a fence, whether it's concrete or block or a metal fence, whatnot. So those are the types of actions that homeowners can implement around their house to make their home more survivable.
and a lot of homeowners feel like making their home less vulnerable to fire is something less that they do for themselves and more that they see it as for the benefit of the insurance company. Because they say, well, I'm reducing their risk so that they're going to keep more of the premiums that they received and have to pay out less for claims. Why wouldn't they want to share in the cost of doing that? And it seems like the insurance company has been really slow to provide economic incentives to homeowners to do the mitigation work. Even though, at the end of the day, even if your home is protected with insurance, that's not going to compensate the next 10 years of misery that you'll have as a result of having lost your house. So
absolutely.
There's balance there between whether they think they're doing it for themselves or whether they're doing it to help their insurance company. But if the risk is reduced, they feel like the premium should reflect that.
Yeah, we certainly know that the wildfire issue is really about having a home that you can return to after the wildfire passes.
Exactly.
And resuming life, as closely as possible to what it was before the wildfire occurred. And taking these mitigation actions gives you that best opportunity. And then also, when you implement these actions on your home, it significantly reduces the risk and has an insurance benefit to it. Insurers want to write insurance policies. They're in the business to do that, but they want to write those policies that are good risk. And when a homeowner implements these actions, it makes their house a good risk.
Okay. So it might not be that implementing these things gets you a reduced rate. It might simply be that you don't lose your coverage.
That is a possibility, yes.
Right. You become eligible for coverage as a result of doing these things. And really, these things have to be done at a community level. Right? Even though the community consists of all of the individual homeowners, if I harden my house completely and I, renovate it into a 12th century medieval castle, completely stone, right, with a moat that acts as an emergency cistern, but my neighbors don't, then my house is standing in the middle of, thousands of burned up toxic waste homes, which is really not going to be habitable, right? But, by itself. Just because your home is standing doesn't mean you want to live there if it's surrounded by all of the toxic from your neighbors' homes that burned up.
And that underscores the, importance of doing the neighborhood mitigation. It really starts at the parcel level with each homeowner doing what they can do to reduce their risk. But when you do it at scale across entire neighborhoods, then you significantly reduce the risk. For every home that we prevent from igniting, that has a positive impact on the structures that surround it from not exposing those additional structures to flames, radiant heat, and ember exposure.
What's your particular specialty or interest in this field? The
Um,
general stuff, right? We could go on CAL FIRE's website and we could look up, 10 things you could do to harden your home, but I'm sure that you didn't get brought into IBHS to distribute the same flyer, right?
Yeah. So my background is in the fire service, working for CAL FIRE for 30 years before I retired. And the last 6 years, I worked underneath the Office of the State Fire Marshal in a division called the Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation Division. And we looked at property and community risk reduction. And before that, it was 24 years in the field, responding to hundreds of wildfires across the state of California and other emergencies. And so, my background is in the fire service, and that's what I bring to IBHS to continue that work of significantly reducing the risk to homes from wildfire. And so I touch on everything that we do related to wildfire at IBHS.
What's your own area of passion, though, in that, or you feel like you bring unique insights?
Yeah, it's that last 6 years I spent in the fire marshal's office working on parcel and community risk reduction, where I really can combine my experience as a firefighter in the field and then also the prevention efforts that we worked on at CAL FIRE. And then I really began to get engaged in the research aspect, so I can combine those three together. And I grew up in the town of Paradise that was heavily impacted by the Camp Fire in 2018. And my parents' home, the home that I grew up in, they lost their home that day on the Camp Fire. And so that kind of drives my passion to stay involved and help property owners with reducing their risk. Because at the end of the day, it's about risk reduction at the community and property level. And if we don't accomplish that, we're not going to change the outcome of these high intensity fires.
Yeah, and you said at the end of the day it was about risk reduction. And from our perspective, yes. From some people's perspective, and this is something that seems to come out after Paradise, was that it was really more about individual freedom to build your house the way you want and vegetate the way you want and place the landscaping where you want, rather than having to comply with science. Unfortunately, science always wins at the end of the day. But when science is represented through public policy, through laws, people tend to reject the science more than they would if you simply presented the science to them and let them make decisions. How do you navigate that difficult area?
Yeah, that is a definite challenge. I mean, the town of Paradise implemented a local ordinance to include the provisions of what we have developed, the Wildfire Prepared Home Program. And so they are incorporating the science, the latest in wildfire research, into the rebuilding of the town of Paradise. And that's not always the case across California and many Western states. And so it's a all hands approach, all front approach of building strong codes so that new homes are built to a high standard to resist these intense wildfires, creating good defensible space around the home, and then working with policymakers and other stakeholders in the field so that we can get the necessary tools and funding and other things that are needed in order to assist homeowners and communities with implementing these measures, because it can be quite a bit of undertaking to implement this community-wide. And so assistance is definitely needed in the form of various tools that could be available, programs, and financial assistance.
I see. And how do you get this to the top of someone's daily to-do list? I have a whole bunch of mitigation things I should be doing around my house. And on most days, those things don't make it to my to-do list. Right? Maybe when I see smoke and I see fire coming over the horizon, it's like, oh yeah, I better get that done right now. But otherwise, people seem really busy. They have a whole lot of things that they're working on other than their mitigation. So how do you get that to be a priority?
Yeah, that is a challenge, and usually it takes like a wildfire or a significant wildfire year in order to bring awareness. But it's really about education, uh, leaning into different community groups and partnering together, and just educating the homeowners about the risk from wildfire, what wildfire is, and what they can do to reduce that risk. And we're not powerless against wildfires. There's absolutely things that we can do that are based in research that we know that are effective. And so educating homeowners. And then we have a website called wildfireprepared.org. And we encourage homeowners to go to that website, download our how to prepare your house checklist, and then print that off. Take a walk around your house and compare your situation to the checklist. And then make a list of the things that you need to take action on, those mitigation requirements that are needed to prepare your house. And then look at that list. Are there things that are simple things that you can do as a DIY type project that are relatively easy to do? Take care of those things right away. Also look at the things that you can do, but maybe are more involved and you'll have to plan out and can take some financial resources. So develop a plan to attack those. And then there's other things that may need to be done that you may need to hire someone to help you with and can be more involved. So develop a plan to implement those too. But really it's develop a list and then get started. And then when you complete one item, then move to the next until you've completed them all. It's again, that's that systems-based approach that's backed in science that meaningfully reduces the risk from these high intensity wildfires.
You think that education is sufficient? Because education tells me I shouldn't eat 3 cheeseburgers, and education tells me I shouldn't smoke cigarettes, and yet I look around and I see people doing things that they've been educated not to do, but they haven't been motivated to change their behavior. And it seems like, you're right, if we want to see, compliance with the science, then we really have to see, motivation more than just the transfer of knowledge. And what are your insights about that?
Yeah, it's starts with education, so people understand what are the right actions to take.
Okay.
And then they may need some assistance to get those actions complete on their property. Like I said, some may be able to do themselves,
Right.
and then some they may need assistance with, which I mentioned earlier, like financial assistance that nonprofit organizations and government entities can assist with, and then neighbor helping neighbor. There's programs where neighbors can come together in a community, like Firewise USA through the National Fire Protection Association, to bring about awareness and just a sense of community of working together to accomplish a common goal of protecting their community from high intensity wildfires and bringing about good behavior and good changes. So there's no one method that's going to work in every situation or work for each individual. We have to take all the necessary steps that we can to bring about the change that's needed.
And so people do really respond, from a motivational standpoint, to feeling like they're part of a community and that they're part of a movement, that they're involved in something that both they and their neighbors care about. And so the various regional Firewise councils and programs like that, can really help enact that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's about bringing together the community members and then talking about wildfire and what actions can they do individually as property owners and then collectively as a community to reduce their risk.
So having a, fire awareness week or something, in each community on a regular basis, and it's not an annual thing. Right.
And it's a long process that may need to be implemented within your community depending on where it's at, and so it's getting started and then just keeping the momentum that's built going forward until you've really done all that you can do to prepare for these fires.
Yeah, and that is one of the beautiful things about fires versus other natural disasters, is this is one of the ones you really can do a lot about.
Absolutely. And also, it's a different peril than some of the other natural disasters in that, if you do everything right and I'm your next door neighbor and I don't do anything and my house catches fire, and I can imperil your house. And so, it's different in that respect. And so we really need to do collectively across the neighborhood mitigation.
Tell me about the science side. I know IBHS is very big on the labs and testing, and that seems to be, kind of visually, certainly the more exciting aspect of the work that goes on there. Can you describe some of the projects that are going on with testing right now? Ember cast tests and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a research center located in Richburg, South Carolina. And at that research center is our test chamber. And there is a bank of 105 fans that are 6 feet in diameter that can blow up to 135 mile an hour wind through a big concrete structure that's behind that bank of fans. And that concrete structure is 6 stories in height, has big airplane style hangar doors that are on the back that can open and allow the wind to pass through the test chamber. And then in the center of that concrete structure is a big turntable, and we can build a full-size structure and submit it or place it on that turntable and then subject it to the different perils. And so for wildfire inside the test chamber, we have a trench with pots, and we burn wood dowels and wood mulch. And then there's fans that push the embers that are produced by that burning material up these stacks and then out the end of the stack. And then the wind from the fans picks up those embers and casts them onto the structure. And so we're able to test the structure as a system of components, just as it would experience a wildfire in real life. So inside, we're testing really the system of components from the roof to the ground and the immediate surroundings, in particular that first 5 feet, which we found to be just so critical for wildfire defense, where embers can land in that 5 feet. And if there's something ignitable there, whether it's mulch or a wood fence or a plant or something, it can ignite that item and lead to the ignition of the house. And then also a fire just burning unchecked from out and off the property onto the property, burn through that 5 feet right to the side of the house and ignite a vulnerable component. So we're able to test the systems-based approach, as we like to call it, for wildfire mitigation. And then on the back side of the test chamber, we can build like accessory structures and accessory dwelling units, and then burn them, light them on fire, and then just downwind from them, we have a full-size single-family home, single-story, that we're looking at that structure-to-structure fire spread relationship, because we know in all these really destructive wildfires that structure-to-structure fire spread plays a significant role in that. And so we're looking at the spacing between homes, the materials that each, the accessory dwelling unit and shed, and then the home are built out of, the orientation of them to each other, and how doors and windows and other openings and structures influence the spread of the fire. And so that we're conducting a lot of research right now on structure-to-structure fire spread. We're also looking at the connectivity of fuels that can be between homes. So if one home is on fire and it ignites a shed that's on that property, and then that shed ignites the wood fence, and then that wood fence is connected over to the next home, and then that pathway that fire can take to get to the next home and then lead to its loss. So we're looking at those relationships and conducting research in that area. And then we also go out during the most destructive wildfires, Lahaina, and most recently the Eaton and Palisades fires, and many fires before those, and look at what we're seeing in the lab and what are we seeing on the ground, and validate the work that we're doing. We also, if we see something in the field while we're out there that we haven't investigated yet, we can take that back to the lab and then develop a research project around that. So right now, our research is really heavily focused on structure-to-structure fire spread, the connectivity of fuels, and doing some post-fire analysis work still on the Eaton and Palisades fire.
And about how often do you burn a house down?
It's an intricate process to try and get the right weather, because it does occur outside, and we're located in South Carolina. So having the right weather, and then at pulling everything together. And then we have a set kind of schedule. So it's not like every other week or so. We're
it's like
burning
an IMAX show, Tuesday to 8.
Well, we try, but weather dependent and other things might push it off a bit. But so we have first phase of accessory dwelling unit research that we're conducting right now, and we have 2 more burns. We're supposed to do one this week, and we have 2 left in this first phase, and then over the next 2 years, we're going to do some additional burns on the accessory dwelling unit, that structure-to-structure fire spread.
I see. So you learn a lot about the combustibility of materials and how susceptible they are to amber cast and acting as ember beds. And then simultaneously, you have this education component. But it seems that, in the consumer world, there's not a lot of connection between what you're learning and what consumers are seeing. I read an article by Jake Kostecki, who has a magazine called Wooey Pro. And he said that here in the city of Boulder, they will pay you basically $100 a tree to remove your junipers because there's such a potent fuel source around your home. And yet you could go down to Home Depot and you could buy junipers all day long, and there's no warning on them that says, hey, this is probably not what you should be putting around your house. Likely they sell wooden mulch and rubber mulch and all these, very, very combustible things that bear no warning. And if we know these things to be dangerous, then, why isn't there a consumer level warning on them?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we do some work with the big box stores on providing some education about products, not only just the vegetation side, but also products that are available that they can purchase and take back to their house for a retrofit. So yes, absolutely. Those things can be purchased, like you mentioned, but just don't place them close to your house. If you have a bigger yard, then place them further away if you want them on your property. But particularly that first 5 feet is so critical. We don't want anything combustible there: mulch, fences, plants, trees, and so forth. It just is a recipe for the wildfire to find those items, ignite them, and lead to the ignition of the house.
Yeah, but there's a landscaper in Australia, and he describes his career as placing the fuels.
Yeah, and that's the guidance around defensible space is separation, both vertical and horizontal separation of plants and trees and other combustible items, and that's a good way to describe it. And as I mentioned earlier too, the fuel is anything that can burn in an urban environment. So we need to think of that not just as plants and trees, but fences and wood piles and sheds and other combustible items, including your garbage totes. We saw a lot of garbage totes that were burned during the Eaton and Palisades fires that caused some significant damage to homes. And also hot tubs. You may not think of your hot tub as a potential fuel source for the fire, but they definitely can be.
Because of all the resins in them and the fiberglass?
Yeah, and the outer, we saw a couple examples of the outer surface of the hot tub, the walls of the hot tub, if you will, igniting. And even though the hot tub has water inside of it, it's shielded from the fire on the outside. So the outside walls can ignite and then cause damage to the house. And eventually the hot tub will burn. It'll burn through and the water will leak out. But it doesn't mean that because it has water in the hot tub, right, that the hot tub is not flammable.
Right. Just like you're 70% water. That doesn't mean you're not flammable, right?
Right. Yeah. We could still sustain burns as well. You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we sure can. And I imagine that smoke is also a huge factor here, right? When your hot tub next to your house is burning and all the vinyl is on fire and the fiberglass is on fire, that's a tremendous amount of nasty black smoke full of all kinds of horrible things. To what degree does smoke play a role in the destruction of a home, even if the home is not burnt down?
Yeah, we know that smoke can make its way inside the house and lead to smoke damage, but that's not an area that we really focus our research on at all. So that's outside of our realm. We really focus on the exterior of the home and the materials that it's made out of, and then its immediate surroundings. And that's what we've built into the Wildfire Prepared Home program. Is that systems-based approach that's backed in science that looks at those components of the home. So having a Class A fire-rated roof, metal gutters and downspouts, and cover the gutter with a metal cover, enclosing eaves, dual pane glass windows with tempered glass for both panes, and then creating the defensible space. And those are just a few of the things, not all of the requirements, of course, for defending a home, but that's what we built into the Wildfire Prepared Home program. And when homeowners implement that systems-based approach, they've really meaningfully reduced the risk to their home from a wildfire.
When we build a new home, we think in terms of, cost per square foot, 600, 800, whatever dollars a square foot to build. When we look at doing complete, wildfire-based remediation, is there some type of a cost per square foot analysis?
Not that I'm aware of per square foot, but there was an analysis for retrofitting a home completed by Headwaters Economics a couple years ago. And it outlines kind of a list because each home is unique in where it sits, what it's originally made out of, the surrounding area, and what mitigation measures might be applicable in that situation. So this study looks at each component, the roof, walls, windows, etc., independently of the others, and gives kind of a cost range of what it would take to retrofit that particular component based on a certain size house. So I think that is definitely the most authoritative document that I'm aware of as far as the cost of retrofitting a house.
I see. And pretty important to do. What about gutters? Like, do we even need gutters?
Well, they do play an important function as far as gathering water and getting it off the house and away from the base of the house. But not every situation requires gutters. So if you don't need them in your situation, you don't have to have gutters. If you do have them, it's best to have metal gutters, downspouts, and then cover the gutters with a metal gutter guard so that debris can't accumulate in the gutter itself. And wherever debris accumulates, whether it's in a gutter, on the roof line, the base of your house, after a wind event, take a walk around your house, wherever you see that debris accumulating, you're also going to find embers gravitate to those same locations during a wildfire. And if there's debris there and the embers come in, they're going to ignite that debris and potentially lead to the ignition of the house. So make sure that's cleared away. One way to prevent that for a gutter is to cover it. Now, you could still get the accumulation of some debris on top of the gutter, so it may not be a maintenance-free item when you put it on. It still may require some maintenance, but at least it's going to be easier to get to that debris and maintain it over time.
And as you go through the science and the experiments that you participated in, what things what has surprised you? Either in terms of, we didn't know this would be such an easy fix, or we hadn't expected that this was such a great vulnerability. Like, have there been some surprises along the way? Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's really that anything that's combustible in an urban environment, once a fire enters into that, we really look at three things. The separation distance between structures, and that includes other, not just homes, but accessory dwelling units and outbuildings. the connective fuel pathways that I mentioned earlier that fire can travel to get between homes and within the community, and then the materials that the home is made out of. And so it's that pathways is you learn a lot about in doing the post-fire analysis of how a fire travels between homes. And there's just infinite really number of pathways that a fire can take to do that because we have so many combustible items on our property. And then the next thing is that first 5 feet out from the home, just how critical of an area that really is for defensible space. That is absolutely the most critical area. And, we feel really strongly that area, what we know about the science today is it needs to be non-combustible. When you have combustible items in that area, they can ignite into these high intensity wildfires and lead to the loss of the structure. And so, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, and then the work that we're doing around structure to structure fire spread, just how even just a little bit of extra spacing between homes and then improving the building materials that they're made out of can really make a difference in the home surviving high intensity wildfire. So it's really not just one approach, as we say, it's that systems based approach to wildfire mitigation.
Do you see instances? I'm imagine that now that the every community is inundated with security cameras and surveillance cameras and this and that. Like, you have a tremendous opportunity to watch fires spread and learn, from real life structure to structure incidents, things that would be way beyond what you could ever, replicate in the lab where you're burning one house. And if you're doing structure, maybe it's, shed to home or something, but it's not home to home to home to home. Right. Like you could see that, I'm sure if you pulled up the LA traffic cams or something like that, you could watch fires spread and learn a tremendous amount from that.
Absolutely. All the video cameras that are out there, cell phones are capturing this stuff. When we're out in the field doing our post-fire analysis, if we come across a house where the homeowner is still home and we start talking with them, and one of the questions that we always ask is, did you take any, video from your cell phone, or do you have a security system where you captured video? Because that is really invaluable information where we can see it happening in real time as it played out. And so we try to gather that information, and we did on the Marshall Fire during our post-fire deployment there, capture the structure fire spread as it occurred across 3 different structures from a doorbell camera across the street. So really invaluable information that aids in the research.
No, that's fascinating. And as you get that, then you incorporate that real world footage and then I guess that informs the next tests that you do.
Yeah, that can be incorporated into our education that we do, presentations that we give to various groups. I use that particular video all the time in my presentations, and then that helps inform our research as well.
And tell me about this, this zone 0 or 0 to 5 feet. You could plan that, and you could actually go out and, remove all the flammables in that 5 feet, but you have to maintain that during an actual fire, right? Because if you've got plastic trash cans out and they blow up against your house, now you've infringed on that 0 to 5 feet with burning plastic, trash cans. So how do you keep things from getting into that zone when those winds do erupt?
Yeah, so prior to a fire, if you have a wind event and you don't have a fire associated with it, when that wind event's over and during the wind event, go out and walk around your house and see how the wind is traveling around your house, where debris accumulates. Where you've placed your trash cans, are they being pushed up against the side of your house, or are other things that are combustible happening, being pushed into that zone 0? So, take that opportunity to learn what might happen during a fire event. And then we always like to say, if you're anticipating fire conditions that are coming up, like a red flag warning on watch, where you might have strong winds and dry temperatures and really low relative humidities, then take the opportunity to walk around your house and do some preparation steps in advance of that wind event and that significant fire weather coming in, particularly focusing on that first 5 feet and then up on the roof, looking if any debris is accumulated in gutters and on the roof line and removing that stuff. And you can take those trash cans and move them inside your garage or move them further away from the house and take those opportunities to do some preparation. And also, we like to say when you're gone from your house for an extended period of time to that do those same steps, because the fire could happen while you're away from home and you're not there to do some last minute steps before the evacuation occurs.
And are there things that can stand in as kind of Ember proxies in advance, where you might figure that where leaves are accumulating around your home, or if leaves are accumulating, in the recess of your recessed front door, your recessed garage door, if leaves accumulate there, is that a good proxy that that's probably where embers are also going to accumulate?
Yeah, absolutely. Wherever debris accumulates during a wind event is also where embers are going to flow in. And then you bring those two things together. You have a fine fuel with embers. It's going to lead to those ignitions and then potentially the house as well. So in those things, the mitigation steps that you can implement on your house and surrounding area need to occur well in advance of the fire. And as the fire occurs or you're anticipating red flag warnings or whatnot, then do those last minute steps where any debris that's blown in and accumulated, you remove that stuff. But really preparing in advance of the fire using that systems-based approach to harden the elements of the home, the components of the home, using good non-combustible materials, ensuring that your vents have the right size mesh if you have a mesh vent, or the ember and flame resistant vent are installed, and so that embers can't make their way inside the house and ignite fires on the other side. Doing those steps in advance is really critical.
And we've seen obviously the pace of wildfire increasing, right? More fires of more severity, more structures involved, etc. To what degree is the science advancing in pace with fire? And to what degree do we see remediation increasing? Is the rate at which people are hardening their homes keeping up with the increase in the rate of fire?
So the science, as far as what the vulnerabilities are to a house and what we can do to reduce those vulnerabilities, we know a lot in that area. There's obviously still more research that needs to be done. And I'm sure we can engineer new products and stuff that can help increase the resilience of homes. There's more work that needs to be done on the neighborhood scale. We know more about the parcel level risk reduction than we do about community level risk reduction, and how the fire can travel through a community and between homes. And so definitely more work there. As far as the risk reduction that's occurring at the property level, that really is lagging behind. We are not keeping pace with the severity of these fires. We're doing, in jurisdictions that have a building code in place for building in wildfire prone areas, we're doing a good job in those jurisdictions of ensuring that homes that are built do not become part of the problem moving forward. But the vast majority of the homes are pre-existing before building codes and have various vulnerabilities with them. And that's the majority of the homes that are very vulnerable to wildfire, and that we need to really focus more of our effort on is retrofitting those homes to be able to stand these fires. Because if we don't, we're not going to see a change in the what's been happening lately.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you have institutional opposition to the necessary hardening activities, where you have two organizations in the same community, one advancing the science, advancing the research, spreading the education, telling people what they ought to do, in order to harden their homes. And then you have these historical preservation committees that actually get laws passed that prohibit making changes to the exterior of your home because they're trying to preserve some type of the history of what the area looked like, including its vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that's an important thing to recognize, is that there's a lot of different things out there. You have preparing for wildfire, and historical preservation, and many times these things can coexist, and sometimes they may not coexist. So it's bringing everyone to the table to see what is the best course of action that incorporates all of this together. How can we defend homes, make them more safer, and have a higher ability to return to a home that's standing afterwards, while still incorporating, historical preservation and other factors.
It's tricky.
It is very tricky.
That's the bottom line. It's tricky, but
Yeah.
but I think it's really encouraging what you said, that the body of science is fairly well established. It's not that we need a tremendous amount of new research about what's flammable and what's not, right? Or what propagates flames into homes and what doesn't. We know that. So it sounds like really we have more of a behavior challenge ahead than great scientific unknowns.
Yeah, the social science behind getting people to take the right mitigation actions is a critical area. I think a lot of more research is needed in.
Yep, and I guess more funding for that as well.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, fascinating chatting with you, and I think anybody in the fire space is aware of the the research that you do and how exciting that is, and how that's being propagated into education in the community. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Steve Hawks with the IBHS. You can find them on the web at, you fill in the blank for me here, IBHS.
IBHS.org and wildfireprepared.org.
Wildfireprepared.org is probably the one that's going to be the most useful for you if you're looking to get your home compliant and, as Steve says, have the greatest likelihood of coming back after a fire and finding your home and your stuff still there. So thank you so much for that. I'm Steve Wolf. You've been watching or listening to The Fire Break. We're sponsored by Team Wildfire. Thanks again so much for listening, and we'll see you at the next one. Take care.
Take care, everybody.